So who are you, by the way? Who are you? What do you do?
Who is this mystery man?
Yeah. Who am I talking to?
I'm retired. I am a former video game programmer.
Oh, wow.
I was one of the founders of the company Neversoft, who
Sure.
developed Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, and so I was able to kind of retire fairly young from that, and then did a bit of freelance consulting and stuff for a few years after that. But also just like did stuff I was interested in, which was debunking conspiracy theories and
How did
eventually analyzing UFO videos.
well, how did that become the thing that you really like to do? Because I my audience is probably pretty aware that I have zero interest in it, and like I do it because I kind of get dragged kicking and screaming, and I'll bring on a guest, I'll bring in an expert, but I just like, at the end of the day, and we talked about this in Clubhouse a couple of days ago, right? That every story just leads to somebody saw something, and as a journalist, for me, that's such a pointless story. So,
Well, for me, what I like to focus on are the stories where it isn't just somebody saw something; it's an actual photo or a video. And for me, those are the fun, interesting things to kind of get into in depth and track down and try to figure out what they are, because it's like a little puzzle.
right.
You're given this little 5 megabytes of data, which is just a video that's a bit blurry and shaky. And then you've got to do maybe some detective work to track down who shot it and what time it was when they shot it and where they were and the date and what direction they were looking in, all these things. And then the camera, what type of lens were they using? Look at the EXIF data, what's the exposure? There's all kinds of information you can pull out of these things.
Yeah.
And then try to take that and what you see on screen and try to transfer that two-dimensional representation of the world into an understanding of how the 3D actually works, the 3D representation of the world works. And quite often you're looking at things like planes, and then you get to like track down the plane by looking at Flight Radar 24 and see what plane it was, and all kinds of things.
But I read, or I know that you started out not looking at UFOs specifically, but you were dealing with contrails. How did that come about?
Well, it's weird, really. I mean, it kind of started because I was editing Wikipedia, because I thought editing Wikipedia was fun, like going on there and changing the articles.
You need some kind of retirement coach or something, I think.
Yeah, well, I was doing lots of other things as well.
Okay.
But one other thing I was also doing was learning to fly. So I was taking flying lessons. But so I would look up things on Wikipedia and then I would correct them. And then I came across this chemtrails conspiracy theory, and I thought that was something that I could research chemtrails and then correct the Wikipedia entry. But it turns out just editing Wikipedia entries like that isn't that much fun. And I wanted to write more expansive things and do investigations into specific cases and things like that. So I started a blog, Contrail Science, where I'd look into all these specific claims people were making about the chemtrails conspiracy theory. And then it was really all about getting into the science of contrails and how they form and the paths that planes take and the altitude and stuff. And so what came with that was people would post videos of planes and they would say, this is a secret government spraying plane. And then I would take that video and I would track down exactly which plane it was. And it turned out to be, Air Alaska Flight 23 from Seattle to Los Angeles or whatever it is, and not a secret government military spraying plane. And so I got kind of good at identifying planes in the air. And then, of course, with chemtrails, you get people who are interested in other things, and people are interested in UFOs and sometimes things like alien visitors and whatnot. And they would send me things like, hey, here's a flying saucer flying along past this contrail or this chemtrail that they call it. And so then I would look into that. And so now I'm starting to look at UFO videos, and then people just start sending me UFO videos.
So what is the toolkit then? So when somebody presents you with footage of a UFO, what do you do to try to analyze and figure out, to the best of your ability, what is really there?
Well, the very first thing to do is try to ensure you're getting the best quality version of the video. Because a lot of the times people will post things on social media and it goes through the YouTube or the Twitter compression algorithm. And it comes out, it's like terrible. You can't really see anything. So you want to try to dig down and try to find the original version. And you also want to find out who took it, and if possible, contact them and try to get them to send you the in-camera original. But if you can do that, sometimes you can't. But then what you really want to do after that is figure out where is the camera and what is it looking at. Because a lot of the time, what you're looking at is something that makes sense in the context of where the camera actually is. A lot of the time it can be a plane. And if you know where the camera was and when the video was taken, you can go into these flight tracking sites like Flight Radar 24 or planefinder.net, and you can just rewind time back to that spot and you will see planes in that direction. And sometimes you can take those, the tracks of those planes, and you get a 3D track, a KLM track that you can import into Google Earth. And then you can take the virtual camera in Google Earth and put it where the camera was when you saw this UFO, and then the track of the plane will appear and you can see it come in, and you can overlay the video with the thing in Google Earth, and you can prove with beyond a reasonable doubt that it was that particular plane. And beyond that, there's things like using Photoshop or a video editing software to analyze the video in more depth, bring out the hidden detail. A lot of the times there's things in the shadows that you can't see, and you can bring that detail out. But
I know that is a bit of a dangerous tool to use, because in many cases that's also the same way that some of the people who are making conspiracy theories will take a photograph, blow it up many times, and it introduces image artifacting into the picture that then
definitely
starts to create boxes around things and so on. So
yeah, you've got to be careful with that, and what you want to do there is only use transforms that don't alter the actual pixels. They just change the brightness of the pixels, the intensity of the pixels, or the color of the pixels. Because that way you're not losing or gaining any additional detail. Because often people will upscale something, and that can create a contour around it that didn't actually exist in the real thing. And what you're seeing is a contour that comes from either just pixel boundaries, or sometimes from JPEG or motion compression artifacts. You get these 8x8 boxes, and the more it's compressed, the more you get these jagged 8x8s. And then people take that and then they upload it somewhere, they download it again, it gets compressed different ways. Sometimes they rotate it, and then you get them at an angle, and then they blow it up and enhance it, and it looks like you've got all this detail, but really you don't. So what I do is I always try to just not modify the actual pixels. And a big problem now is people are starting to use AI upscaling, which is basically the computer looks at this image or this video and kind of squints at it and then imagines in its little robot brain what it thinks it looks like, and then draws a version of it and then gives you that. Which isn't actually giving you more information than you had before. It's kind of like you're relying on the robot's imagination for what you actually
it's
get.
a fever dream from an artificial intelligence. So that alone, it's funny, like that idea of just recreating the location of the camera, recreating the sky conditions, day or night, to see what airplanes, what stars in the sky, where's Venus. What percentage would you say that wipes away of what people think are unidentified objects? You are turning them to identified objects.
Well, when you can actually get a very good detailed position and time, a very large percentage of them can be resolved that way. Now, of course, a lot of UFOs are not actually planes. They're things like balloons, or even birds, or just something that's so far away you can't see it. It's too far away, so you can't tell what it is. But if it is a plane, then, and when you have this location information, then you're almost guaranteed to be able to find it. There's been numerous cases where I've done that. There was a very famous one a few years ago in 2017, the Chilean Navy UFO case, where the Chilean Navy had taken video of what looked like this little blob in the distance, and then this blob, it was infrared, so it was hot. You could see it looked like it was spewing out hot liquid from the back. They couldn't figure out what it was, and the Chilean government, actually, the Air Force, has a body that investigates UFOs, and they spent 2 years investigating it, and they couldn't figure out what it was. And then after 2 years, they released this video, and there was a big article on it in the Huffington Post. And they said it's a genuine UFO because we can't figure out what it is. For 2 years, the best people have studied it. And so I looked at it and I thought, oh, that looks like a plane leaving a contrail. And sure enough, that's what it turned out to be. Within a few days, we tracked down exactly which plane it was and created this 3D visualization, and that showed that this plane was in this exact spot, something that the Chilean Air Force's body had not been able to do after 2 years of study.
Yeah.
So just because people are experts, it doesn't mean that they're able to figure things out. You know, I'm an expert at a rather niche thing, which is like looking at planes with contrails and figuring out where they are in space. Right. And they perhaps didn't have that particular expert on that body.
So what do you do then when you load up Stellarium to check to see the star positions and the positions of the planets. You load up your flight tracker to show you the positions of the airplanes and at the right time and the location of the camera. But there's a lot of fairly famous examples that you've gone into. Let's talk about the most recent one is this one with these strange pyramids flying in the sky.
Right.
So how did that one come about?
Well, that's when I just saw it at the same time everybody else did. And I think the filmmaker, Jeremy Corbell, posted a tweet with a link to the video. And so I looked at the video and I said, my first impression is that this is a plane because it's flashing like a plane and it's just out of focus. And actually, I said that literally within 10 minutes of him posting the original video. But when you just say that, I don't really have the evidence to demonstrate that. And so I kind of set out trying to show how it could be that. And there was actually a huge amount of information I was able to work with the way it came out. But the first thing I did was try to figure out, could a night vision monocular actually make little triangles? And so I was doing things like took my camera and I modified it by adding a triangular lens cap. Let me see, get that to focus. But yeah, it's just a regular lens cap with a bit of tape on it, and so there's a triangular hole in it. And when I took pictures of stars and lights and things, they turned triangular, exactly the same as they did in the footage. And then some people I knew online, one of them had a night vision binocular, and he discovered that this actually had a triangular aperture. And so he took this outside and he took pictures of planes and stars and lights in the distance, and they turned into triangles exactly the same. Then another thing you can do is if you have a lens cap in the front of your night vision binocular, some people actually cut these little holes in. Like this is a lens cap for PVS 14, which is a military standard night vision. And people sometimes cut little holes in to improve the focus. And if the hole happened to be a triangular hole, it would have the exact same effect. So we showed that it was definitely possible to create this effect. So then the next step was try to figure out, like, hey, this is a plane. And it's just out of focus or something like a plane, then what could it be and where is it? One thing we looked at was the flashing of the lights. They flash in what looks like a random sequence. It looks like a triangle that is actually flashing. So I tried to find planes where the lights would flash in a similar sequence. So I analyzed this sequence and I discovered it was actually two overlapping sequences, one at like 1.5 seconds and one at 1.2 seconds. And so they got out of sequence and looked random. And I found that Boeing 737s have similar things. So it's kind of consistent with existing navigation lights of planes. But you actually
matched it up, right? Like you matched up the frequency of the flashes of the triangle to the make of the airplane. It was like a 737.
That was the most consistent. The Boeing 737, the main nav lights matched up exactly. I think the tail lights, or what I assumed with the tail lights, were a bit off. Problem with finding these things is that most of the footage you see of planes with nav lights is actually when they're on the ground and not when they're at 30,000 feet. So it's actually hard to find reference footage of them in flight. But that was the best I could do, and it matched pretty well. I wouldn't say it was an exact match, but it was a pretty good match. And you put them side by side, it looks essentially like it's the flashing lights of a plane.
Yeah, I think your video is very compelling. It's just the way you bit by bit work your way towards the recreating almost frame for frame what's being shown in the original released video. So So what's been tricky? What's been the trickiest one for you to deal with? And then, sort of in a preparation of a follow-up question, what's the one that's getting away from you? What's the one that you haven't been able to solve yet?
Well, the problem with UFOs is they all exist in what I call the low information zone. Right? They're only unidentified because there's something about them that is not sufficiently well specified for you to identify them. Generally, that's that they're too far away, like it's a TFA.
Too far a TFA. The other one is that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, the title of my upcoming podcast, TFA. Too far away. Then the other one is that they are out of focus. OOF.
Oof. Yeah.
I like these three-letter acronyms for things.
Yeah.
Or they're things that are like just lights in the sky, and you have no context for what they are. You see a light, and perhaps it's moving, perhaps it isn't. And if someone says that's a UFO, what am I going to do with that? It's a light in the sky. If I can't identify it to a plane in Flight Radar 24, perhaps they don't give the location exactly. You can't solve that. Mm-hmm. You can bring up a hypothesis and say, oh, it's probably just a plane, or it's whatever it is, a skydiver or a meteorite, or, there's all kinds of different possibilities, and a lot of them fit one particular case. But sometimes you can't come up with a definitive answer. But what people are really looking for, though, isn't that. They're not looking for things where we don't have enough information. They're looking for the cases where we actually do have information, where we actually have, say, a good quality video, or a video combined with radar returns, or two videos from different angles, or a sighting that was seen by 10 different people in different locations. Those cases would be very, very difficult to explain if in terms of mundane explanations, if they were as described. But the problem is those cases really don't exist. We don't have cases where we have high quality close-up footage of a UFO that has been in any way verified. There's lots of fake footage, of course, and sometimes you see this anonymous footage crop up on YouTube, usually very low resolution for obvious reasons. But we don't have these good cases, and if we did, I'd love to have a look at them. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, the things that puzzle me are just puzzling because they're too far away, or because they're out of focus, or because they're too small.
They're too unidentified.
Yeah, they're literally unidentified flying objects, which are real things. I see them all. If I was to open my window right now, I would probably see some white dot off in the distance, which could be a bit of fluff. It could be a plane. It could be a bird. It is, though, an unidentified flying object.
Yeah, the name is perfect.
That's not interesting.
Yeah, the name is really ideal. I mean, I do really love the idea of it being an identified flying object. And people always ask me, do you believe in UFOs? And I'm like, I totally do. They're objects. They're flying, and they're unidentified. We don't know what they are.
It's kind of a truism. We know that they're objects, but people think that there is more to it than that, in that they are flying in a way that could not be these other things. They say they see something, and it can't be a bird, it can't be a plane, it can't be a light in the sky. It has to be something, and they have these list of criteria for that. Like there's 5 observables that they talk about. Which is like moving very fast, a sudden acceleration, going from the air to the water. And I think being blurry is actually one of the 5 observables. Being difficult to observe is something that you can observe, which is a clue that it's an alien spaceship.
Right.
But they're quite serious about it. And they will say that the reason it's hard to observe is that it's warping the fabric of space and time around itself. Sure. So it's got a bubble of space-time around it, so that makes it hard to see.
Right. So I guess, what is a UFO that has taken the imagination of the UFO community by storm, that has a really nice, well-sourced, scienced explanation? Like, if you could hand over the evidence, the compelling evidence to this community, which is the one that they love, and yet has just been so debunked, it's kind of hilarious.
That I think the best example of that is the gimbal UFO video, and people will probably argue with me about whether it is debunked or not. Now, the gimbal UFO video is one of the 3 official Navy videos that was released like in 2018. It was kind of leaked out to the press and to Tom DeLonge's To the Stars Academy. And it shows what looks like a flying saucer flying around. It's kind of a black shape, kind of a saucer disc, flying disc shape. And it looks like it's flying sideways, and then it kind of slows down and it kind of rotates. And we got the audio of the pilot saying, "Look at that thing! What is that thing? It's rotating." So they're seeing it as well, but I think they're actually seeing it on the screen rather than by the naked eye. But people have taken this as being evidence of being some kind of anti-gravity craft, because aerodynamically, there's no way a plane can be flying along and then turn 90 degrees and then just kind of hover on its edge. It doesn't work. It would fall out of the sky unless there's some very unusual lift mechanism going on, which there doesn't appear to be anything going on. And you can't see any shape to the thing. It looks like it's a saucer. But this is one I looked at quite a lot. And I think that I've demonstrated fairly conclusively that what it is just glare. It's just infrared glare. Now, glare is the kind of spillover light around another light. Like I'm holding a flashlight in my hand that's, it's like about an inch across. If I turn the flashlight on, it creates a glare, which is about 2 inches across. So you can't actually see the flashlight. And if I make the flashlight brighter, now you've got a glare which is several inches across. And it completely obscures the flashlight and even like large parts of my hand. So if you have an infrared camera and you look at say an FA-18 that's off in the distance, a few miles off in the distance, and this plane is flying directly away from you, you're looking directly up its tailpipe into the hot part of the engine, the very hottest part. And so that's going to appear as in infrared as a very bright light, exactly the same as looking at a flashlight. You see, here's the engine. It's just going that way. You can't see very much, but when it turns towards you, you get this glare. Mm-hmm. And the shape of the glare is defined by the interior of it's defined by the camera, aspects of the camera. The shape of the glare, there's a number of things that can vary it. One of which is just the front cover can be smeared. You can demonstrate this yourself by just kind of touching the lens on your camera, and you will see the shape of the glare change. Now, the cameras in these planes are mounted in a very interesting way. It's a gimbal mount, and the video is called gimbal, which I think is not a coincidence. The camera is a gimbal mount, and it's got a long forward axis and then kind of an up-down axis, which means that for it has this thing called gimbal lock, which is when it has to traverse the forward direction, it can't actually do it because it would end up going up when it needs to go down. So it needs to kind of rotate around. And we see in the video that the rotation of the craft coincides with the traversal of that 0-degree gimbal lock. Right. And we also see that when the object appears to rotate, there's this kind of frame of light splotches in the entire sky that rotates.
So we have to do something similar to that.
If it's part of the camera.
When we're doing astronomy, we have to do a flip. We have to do a meridian flip with our telescope when the objects that you're trying to view are just outside of the telescope's current orientation. You pretty much have to go all the way around the horn to get it. Even if you have to go just a couple of degrees over, the whole thing has to then, because it's the way the mount of the telescope is being held. And so I can sort of imagine a similar situation, that your gimbal is sort of reaching a certain point and that it's having to shift over to get another perspective of this object.
Yeah, and you also have a similar an aspect in astrophotography where you get these cross shapes around stars. Which is essentially the glare, but it's a diffraction effect. The light is being spread out, and this is because of the cross that's holding the mirror in the middle of the telescope.
Yeah, it's funny. The glare that you get matches the shape of the supports that are holding your secondary mirror inside your telescope. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, and if you were to rotate your entire telescope, you would see that cross would rotate as well. And that's what we're seeing in this video. The rotation is an artifact of the camera system, and it's the problem with this explanation is that it's quite complicated. Joe Rogan described it as performing mental gymnastics, which he took as being evidence that it was not true because it was quite complicated. And it actually gets even more complicated because the inner workings of the camera have these mirror mounted gimbals. There's an astrophotography thing I think called a heliostat,
Yep.
which is a type of mirror that always looks directly towards the sun, and it's just a way of steering light with mirrors. So they use these very sensitive internal mirrors, which I think they call coleostats, which is a version of the same thing, to actually do most of the steering. But then they have the exterior thing, which is this giant, like 200-pound ball that they have to rotate to do the gross steering which reverses. So you get this. They try to minimize it with algorithms, and so you only get it during these certain periods. So it looks kind of weird, but you can see that's what's happening, because you can see the entire sky rotating. So that's something I think that people constantly show on TV when you see media stories about these UFOs. You see them put this up because it looks like a flying saucer and it looks like it's levitating.
Yeah.
But I think it's just the glare, and it's just the gimbal system.
And it's right in the crosshairs of the camera system.
Yeah, and that's something that also makes it look unusual. These cameras are really, really good at tracking things. So they lock onto things, and you see a little box around the thing, and then it just stays in the middle. So it gives this weird illusion that kind of you're not really moving that fast. It gives a very deceptive perception of what's actually going on. So it looks like this UFO, this gimbal flying saucer is flying sideways, but it's not. It's actually flying directly away from the camera. And what's happening is the jet with the camera is flying at about 45 degrees to it, and the camera is turned 45 degrees, so it's looking at it. So the clouds behind this object are moving from parallax. Even though the object itself is just staying in the center of the screen, the jet with the camera is moving, and so you get this parallax illusion. And then when it stops, it's not the actual plane itself stopping. The plane itself, in the distance, isn't changing its speed at all. What's happening is the plane with the camera has come around, so now the plane is flying directly towards it, and the camera is facing forward. So it's all these kind of illusions kind of play together to make it seem like something that it isn't. But if you do these mental gymnastics or these mental calisthenics, you can actually figure out what it is. And I think that's what it is, just a gimbal flare.
Right. Yeah. So I'm keeping sort of one eye on the chat while we're talking, and there's a lot of hate going on in the chat, which is a shock and surprise to me. Like, if there's like one community that is the meanest, it is the UFO community. Like I get death threats. I'm sure you do too, right?
I was quite surprised. Yeah, I did. When I started doing some UFO stuff, I was surprised that I did get some hate. And obviously, there's lots of lovely people in the UFO community, and I'm kind of friends with a lot of them, and we get on fairly well, even though they disagree with me. But there's some people who are very, very passionate about it. And I think part of that is because a lot of the people who are into UFOs are people who are what they call experiencers, people who have had some kind of experience that they think means that they saw a UFO or had an encounter with an alien. And for them, that's deeply, deeply personal.
Right.
And they view my debunking of individual cases, nothing to do with their cases, as being an attack on their entire belief system and their entire life view. So they get angry with me.
Yeah. I mean, I think that to see something unusual that you couldn't explain, and then to share that experience with other people, is a very kind of vulnerable place to put yourself in, because on the one hand, you saw something that is so compelling that you needed to talk to somebody, you needed to sort of stake this experience with other people, and then the response is often quite belittling from the scientific community, from the skeptical community, from your friends, from your family, whatever. And that nobody likes to be treated that way.
Yeah,
and so
yeah.
I think that puts you into a place that you're already on the defensive and already kind of prepared to go to battle. You sort of put your armor on, and now you're ready to fight anybody who disagrees with the perspective that you're, the experience, the personal experience you had. And I think of all truth claims, the hardest ones to debunk are personal experience, but they're also the least useful from a scientific perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, unless you've got multiple correlations. But even then, sometimes people are being convicted and sent to the death row based on eyewitness accounts from multiple witnesses who all fingered the wrong guy. And it does happen that people make mistakes. But yeah, if someone is just telling me their personal account of something that happened to them, and often it's like 10 years ago, or if not longer, there's not a lot I can do about it. Yeah, I could perhaps suggest a few things, but often they will get quite angry and they'll say, "You weren't there.
Yeah.
I know what I saw," and it was a giant black triangle or whatever it was.
But I do think that the words that we use as debunkers, as skeptics, is really important. And, the people on my channel, I see a bunch of names in the chat who are very kind and, and have been watching many of these episodes, are even enduring an episode where I'm talking to someone whose very job is to debunk their personal experience. And for me, it's like, the path that I take is that I'm unconvinced, that I find the evidence so far uncompelling and unconvincing. Yeah. And then on the other hand, all I do is talk about the search for aliens. Like, I clearly really want there to be an answer, but I want the answer to be right.
Yeah, no, me too. I would love it if we discovered some evidence of aliens. And I think probably like you, we will probably find it further away from Earth rather than close to Earth. But yeah, you got to talk politely to people, I think, when you're doing this, if you want you have a good experience with people. And that's something I've been trying to do with the UFO community is just engage them. Like I'm not trying to prove that aliens don't exist. That's not what I'm doing here. What I'm doing with each individual case is try to figure what this individual case shows. Now, of course, most of the time, it ends up showing something that's pretty mundane. And a lot of the times when I can't determine what it is, I will put the mundane explanation at the top of the list. That's something I like to do, is make a list of potential explanations. So if I can't figure something out, I would say my number one hypothesis is that it's a plane. My number two is that he misperceived something. Or my number three is that this person lied, made up the story. And my number four explanation is that it's aliens, and probably there's a few others in between. But then people get really upset and they say, how could you possibly accuse this person of lying?
Right.
But I'm usually not. It's usually number three on the list. But I still think that's a more likely explanation than aliens in most of the cases. But people disagree. Some people think that certain witnesses are essentially unimpeachable and that you have to believe them, which I don't think is the case with UFO encounters.
Yeah, it's a fairly well-known logical fallacy, right? It's an argument from authority, which can't be used as an argument. So then let's flip this around the other way then. As a person who is looking for evidence, you mentioned briefly, but I would love to just sort of explore what are the types of evidence moving up the chain that you would find more and more fascinating and compelling and would make you even a believer?
I think, what I would really look for is just better evidence is what we need. And I think, I'm not sure if this evidence actually exists. A lot of people talk about, like, if you get behind the wall of secrecy, is there all this evidence? Does the government actually have evidence of that proves that there's some kind of anti-gravity craft up there? And I'm not sure that does even exist. But if I had the opportunity to look at that, I would look for things that were correlated from multiple sources. There's definitely
good examples of that, right? There was like the SpaceX launches that happen above Los Angeles that create this giant, bizarre plume that's seen by literally millions of people. And you see, there was the Goodyear blimp that was floating above a stadium, and you saw multiple videos of this thing. But I guess what I'm saying is like, not like I'd like to see better pictures of these things, because then I think they would turn into airplanes, blimps, balloons, Venus, etc. What would be the evidence that you would have a hard time discounting that would point more towards this idea that we are being visited by aliens? What would be something that would you go, okay, I have no explanation for this, and it's something that we can't do?
Yeah, essentially that thing, it would have to be something that we can't do. So it'd have to be evidence that demonstrated that something was moving in a way that we can't do, that either it was like a heavy object that was hovering in space and wasn't affected by the wind, meaning it's not a balloon, and it stays there for a long time, or it accelerated at a rate that was very, very rapid, like say above 20 Gs or even above 100 Gs, or it was to go very, very fast if it was going above like 2,000 miles an hour, and doing that from a dead stop would be,
Through the atmosphere.
or if it was doing,
yeah,
through the atmosphere, things that would be physically very difficult to do, even if we had technology to accelerate that fast, because the air gets in the way, and you get these large explosions of energy. But if we had evidence of that actually happening, that would be the type of thing that would convince me that something was going on. But we need more than just one single video of that. And in fact, we don't even really have videos of that type of thing. People talk about, this video evidence, but we don't even have evidence of something like zipping off really fast. All the videos we have are essentially of static objects that really aren't moving very fast at all.
So if you came to
if
me,
we did,
I would find that uncompelling. I would not be convinced. I would find that interesting, and I would add that to, I would say that sounds to me like there's some kind of terrestrial explanation. The Chinese have developed their new nuclear powered rocket aircraft. Like I feel pretty confident that there are all kinds of flying vehicles and military hardware that we are unaware of that are operating in the skies and have yet to be identified. And so I find your evidence unconvincing, Mick.
The thing is, most people in the UFO community aren't trying to convince you that it's aliens. They're trying to convince you that there are advanced technology flying craft out there.
Really? And that is not my experience.
Yeah. The thing is, they say that. I don't think they all really believe that. And I think if you kind of drill down to it, a lot of them actually think it actually is aliens. But they recognize that talking about aliens gets them branded in a certain way. And so they think that the conversation will be much better furthered if they frame it as essentially a national security concern. Why are Chinese drones buzzing our ships? Why are the Russian drones so much faster than our drones? What are these mysterious things? And are they a foreign adversary, or are they some kind of natural phenomenon? And so if you take aliens out of the equation, then it kind of allows you to talk about it in a more sensible sounding way. But again, I think if you drill down into what these people are talking about, they do generally end up thinking that aliens are a pretty good possibility. They just don't like to mention that in public discussions.
So that's super. Like, this is a total surprise to me, and so I'm going to need to spend a little more time talking about this. So my experience is the exact opposite. That nobody is talking about other nation states with advanced aerial capability. That it is all about UFOs and aliens and that being the assumption. So that's your experience, is that the community.
Well, you've got to look at it. Yeah, the community is broad and diverse, but you've got to look at who are the kind of the leaders in the community right now, and there are people who are the leaders. Like, I guess George Knapp is someone who is a journalist, and a lot of it revolves around him. But there's also people like Chris Mellon, who used to be in the government and then went to work for Tom DeLonge, and Luis Elizondo, who also used to work in the government and used to work on a unidentified aerial phenomenon program. They will frame it as essentially being a national security concern. And a lot of the other people who write about it, people who write articles about the issue, are going to be writing it as if these are drones, or there's some kind of a Russian craft of some sort, like national security. But the rank and file people that you see on, say, UFO Twitter, a lot of those are hardcore alien believers, but a lot of them are also people who think that there might just be some kind of advanced anti-gravity flying craft out there. And a lot of those think that maybe that's aliens, maybe it's alien technology, but we don't know, and we shouldn't talk about it. So what you're seeing still is all these people who believe in aliens talking, and perhaps you see more of that.
Mm-hmm.
The people I talk to will often call me out if I say, like, I don't think aliens are very likely. They'll all be like, oh, who mentioned aliens? No one mentioned aliens. You mentioned aliens. You're just trying to smear me.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So that's kind of what's going on in the big discussions about UFOs right now is kind of an attempt to move it forward by focusing more on the national security aspects than on the let's find aliens aspect.
Right. So then, if it was aliens, what would be the evidence that you would find that would be convincing that it was aliens?
Well, like you said, if there's some kind of advanced technology being demonstrated, is it possible that humans have invented that advanced technology? And of course, the answer to that is probably yes. So for it to be evidence of aliens, we'd have to have things like seeing evidence of off-worldness, which would mean like a spaceship flying towards Earth, or like
yes.
that big asteroid that came through a while ago.
Yep.
That seemed a bit suspicious to some people. And if that actually was a bit more suspicious, like it came through the solar system and it was broadcasting prime numbers, then that would be actual real evidence of some kind of extraterrestrial life.
Right. So if we watched, if astronomers were tracking an upcoming asteroid that was going to be coming within, the Earth-Moon distance, and then suddenly it changes course and enters the atmosphere, and hovers
or a little
above a city.
Shuttlecraft came out.
Yeah, a little shuttlecraft come out of this thing, and so we've got this sort of continuous observation of this object. Then that is very compelling.
Yeah, and then of course there's the old cliche of it landing on the White House lawn, but just something like an actual observation of something that is distinctly non-human, like humanoid-looking things, which you could theorize that they are just like androids or something created by humans. But at that point, it's 6 of one and half dozen of the other. It's a very interesting thing that's going on, regardless. But if something came from outer space, you'd kind of have to see it coming from outer space to verify that it did indeed come from outer space.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, you can see that the like when you talk to people who believe in UFOs are proof of aliens, you can see just the size of the gap between what they find compelling evidence and what we who have done some work in astronomy or talked to astronomers or so on have and that gap is, how do we narrow that gap? How do we get to an agreed upon, line of evidence? I mean, I guess that's something that the scientific community struggles with on its own, not to mention the interaction between the scientific community and the general public.
Yeah, I think, what you see a lot now in the UFO community is talk about the phenomenon. And they say the phenomenon is real. And when pressed, they don't always have a good definition of what the phenomenon is. But really, they're talking about unidentified craft that seem to transcend human technology flying in the air. And they will say that is real. And then they say that's kind of the important point, that has been determined. And a lot of them feel that the evidence is in on that point. They feel that it's a slam dunk. We should stop even talking about, is the phenomenon real? The phenomenon's obviously real in their minds, and we should start trying to figure out who is behind this phenomenon. Is it humans? Which humans is it? And if not humans, then who?
Which of our overlords are the reptiles, and which are the Asgardians?
Yeah, see, that's the type of talk they don't like. You see, you're making fun of them.
I guess so. Yeah. Well, I mean, but definitely there are people who feel that there is this. It gets into conspiracy theory that all of these pieces meet together. That you've got the regular visitation by aliens, you've got a cover up by the government, you've got infiltration of our society by alien species, and it is all part of this vast conspiracy that then connects all these other pieces together. I mean, they do seem quite sometimes connected as well.
You get this kind of metaphysical aspect of it for some people as well. Some people think that UFOs are not aliens, and they're not human technology. They're actual some kind of trans-dimensional manifestation of contact with another dimension. And there are some fairly serious people who think this. The guy called Jacques Vallée, who is the scientist in Close Encounters of the Third Kind was based on, the French scientist. He kind of believes a variant of that theory, that UFOs, I think he actually thinks that they're a kind of cover-up that has been created to distract us from transdimensional visitors.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a bizarre thing. But, and then there's all kinds of other things. Lots of people think that there are kind of aliens visiting us to kind of give us information, like the good aliens, visitors who are trying to help humanity transcend to the next level of awareness. And you get people like that. But then, of course, the more serious nuts and bolts UFO people kind of disown those people, and they prefer just to talk about whether it's anti-gravity or whether it's a warp drive, the technical aspects of it. So
right.
There's a whole range of people in the UFO community, and you really don't want to tar any of them with the same brush as any of the rest of them.
So I'd like to take some questions from the audience. People are watching. There's a bunch of interesting questions. So Arjone asks, does anyone see unidentified things in the water? So are there unidentified aquatic objects?
The water is much more problematic than the air because it's difficult to see through. So the unidentified things that we get in the water are essentially usually unidentified sonar blips. And these do exist in the same way that we get unidentified things showing up on radar. We have reports of unidentified things showing up on sonar. And very occasionally you will hear people talk about seeing something, but because it's the ocean, you only get kind of a glimpse of something perhaps moving away from you or moving past you or something like that. We're very limited in terms of the actual photos of things in the water, but there are reports of it. And this is one of the 5 observables, is that UFOs are supposed to also be able to fly underwater, and you get the idea that they can go down and break through the air-water barrier without any change in velocity, which would be very impressive if it could actually happen. So, yes, there are unidentified submersible objects.
Six Bob Ohms wants your explanation for the Tic Tac propulsion video, which I'm assuming, I don't really know what that is, but I'm assuming you've done a look at
that. Well, I'm assuming that's the Nimitz video from 2004, which was basically, there was an encounter with Commander David Fravor. He saw what he thought was a tic-tac shaped object just flying around, and it was like buzzing up, down, left, right, and then it kind of mirrored him and zipped past him. Then later, another pilot went out and took a video, and it showed basically a black blob or a dark blob in the distance. And my explanation for that is that it's probably a plane, and in fact, probably another FA-18. Because what was going on during that time was that they were setting up for an exercise where they had quite a few planes in the air. And the radar operator, Kevin Day, told me when I talked to him that it was kind of a chaotic situation at that point because he was in the middle of canceling the exercise because of this stuff going on. So I think what happened was that he pointed his camera in a certain direction, and it picked up on this distant plane, and he didn't realize it was a plane because he misjudged the distance. Your radar only works if you kind of know how far to look. You look 5 miles in front of you and there's nothing there. It doesn't mean there's nothing 10 miles in front of you, and you might be discounting that because it's your own plane. Then you see the plane and it kind of looks like it moves around on the screen. But if you go kind of frame by frame and look at what's going on, you see that every single one of these motions of the plane and the slight losses in lock comes from changes in the camera, either changes in the zoom level or changes in the type of camera from infrared to visible light, or there's even a gimbal correction where the whole scene rotates, or just changes from like wide to narrow field of view and then back again too quickly. And it just makes the camera lose lock for a while because it's an optical lock. It's not an actual radar lock. And at the end, it just kind of drifts off to the side because it's lost lock completely. So that's what I think that is.
So Tickle Me and I'll Hurt You says, I think this guy's terrified of the thought of there being aliens. Are you terrified of the thought of there being aliens?
No, I mean, like, it's an interesting thing because I'd be fascinated if there were aliens.
Me
but
too.
the idea of alien visitors is a little concerning, you must admit,
Yeah.
because it's not like I don't want to find aliens, but did the Aztecs want the Spaniards to come over? It didn't end up very well, and the gap in technology. But the worry that aliens might be this super advanced race that doesn't think very highly of as little cockroaches isn't a reason to not believe in them. It's a reason to be worried about if they're actually real or not. It doesn't make me think, I'm not believing these aliens and they won't come and visit us. That's not going to change anything. I mean, sure, I'm a little concerned about what might happen when they arrive, if they arrive, but it doesn't really affect my investigations.
Yeah, people always say that to me too, that I'm not ready. I promise you, I'm ready. I'm ready for the truth.
Bring it.
Yeah, please. I think sometimes the truth is uncomfortable, but we are better served knowing reality than living in a fiction. So
yeah,
no, I think,
and that works both ways.
Yeah.
I think I'm trying to discern the truth in all these cases. I'm not setting out to try to disprove aliens because I'm afraid aliens will come visit, which makes no sense. I'm trying to figure out what this thing is on screen. And if it's something that cannot be explained by some kind of hypothesis that fits the normal understanding of the world, then that means that there's something else. And that's really, really interesting. And I would love to discover something that could not be explained by conventional means.
Yeah. I think I 100% agree. And I again, if people who watch this channel know, I'd say a third of the guests that I'm bringing on, we are talking about ways that we can find aliens. And searching for technosignatures, searching for biosignatures, searching for any radio, anything, any tiny little thing that we can put our hooks into to be able to then use that as a way to learn more about what's going on out there in the universe. And it's such a puzzling insult when people insult me with that, you're not ready. I mean, it's condescending. Obviously they're trying to condescend me into believing them. I guess it's a method of manipulation, but it's hilariously laughable because I literally spend so much of my day writing about managing a team that looks into, Universe Today, we throw tons of stories. Every time I see anything, which is here's a clever way we could search for aliens, I task a writer to investigate it because it's fun. I love it.
Yeah. And I think a lot of you maybe as well, grew up reading science fiction, and some of the stuff I really enjoyed was science fiction about first contact between humans and aliens. That was just such a fascinating genre of fiction for me, and the idea that could be true. There's famous examples like Rendezvous with Rama by Arthur C. Clarke, and the asteroid that came through now was very reminiscent of that type of thing. Rendezvous with Rama was an asteroid that came through that was actually an alien spaceship inside, and they went inside, and it was this whole world inside of it. And then there's other things like Childhood's End and all kinds of classic science fiction stories that I grew up with that I would just love for these things to actually come true. I was really into hard science fiction. One of my favorite books was The Unorthodox Engineers, which is just stories about how people solve things in space and in foreign planets. I just love the idea of space and aliens. So bring it.
Yeah, please. And then just this idea that the truth is there, but it's being covered up by a conspiracy. I sort of treat that as then let's just assume it's not real until if there is a conspiracy, and it's if we're living in a simulation and we never find out that we're living in a simulation, then were we really living in a simulation, or was it just life? And so if there is a vast conspiracy that's hiding the truth from us, and they never reveal this truth, and so we're forced to go the long way to build a spacefaring civilization, to send out robotic spacecraft to other worlds, to colonize the entire Milky Way, and eventually find that there was, or maybe even never find, the secret aliens who were, running a conspiracy all this time, were they ever really there?
Yeah, I don't know. It's fascinating, and yeah. Is it a conspiracy that's stuff is being covered up? I mean, I think there might be some little aspects of it that might be true. There's some interesting things like what is the military's actual position on UFOs right now, and why are they letting information out the way they do? I tend to think, though, it's like, what are the theories of history? There's the conspiracy theory of history, then there's the cock-up theory of history.
Right.
Where things just simply emerge from the actions of multiple people with varying different ideas about what they want to do in the world. And I don't really see any grand plan going on here with this militarist involvement with UFOs. If anything, it's more just the PR department just trying to keep a handle on things, because they're just getting so many requests for information. Yeah. And they know that most things are just classified by default, not because they're aliens, but just because they're classified by default, so they can't talk about them. Yeah. But then you get these media storms, and if there's any conspiracy, it's just to try to avoid these media storms.
And I think it's the same thing. Like, Elon Musk would be grateful if somebody could show up with the anti-gravity technology. It would save him a lot of exploding starships. But until somebody does, he's going to have to keep blowing up starships in Boca Chica to try and figure out this space flight thing the hard way. And so, like, the aliens could save us a lot of time if they would just deliver their technology so that we could get on with it and join the Galactic Federation.
I think that conspiracy theory that Elon Musk is covering up anti-gravity technology or doesn't want it somehow is a bit ridiculous, because he's got plenty of money, and he's losing money on his space stuff, but he's actually making his money from Tesla. So what he actually wants to do, it seems, is actually colonize the solar system, and that's his ambition. Yeah. And it would be vastly easier if we actually had this technology. So the idea that he would try to avoid it is just nonsensical.
Well, Mick, it was an absolute pleasure to talk with you today. If people want to follow your work, where should they go?
I'm on Twitter at Mick West, or you can go to metabunk.org.
And you have a great YouTube channel. I'll put links to the YouTube channel
Mick
as well. Yeah, and you've
got Mick West everywhere, so just type it in wherever you are, I will pop up.
Terrific. Well, again, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today, and I hope that I maybe have helped generate a bunch of new sleuths who will now take some of these tools and start investigating some of these interesting photographs and videos for themselves and see what they can find out.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun.
It does sound fun.
Learn a lot whilst you do it.
All right. Thanks, Mick.
Thank you.